The planet Zorvex 4 was not known for peace. It was dry, cracked, and full of smoke. The skies were always red. The air smelled like metal and ash. For years it was ruled by warlords who cared only about power. Villages burned, people cried, and those with no power were sold. In the middle of a burning slave camp inside a steel cage, a young alien girl sat alone. Her name was Ariva. Her arms were chained. Her eyes were tired. Her body shook from the heat. She had not eaten in 2 days. Her silver skin was bruised and her once bright dress was torn. But she was no normal girl. She was royal, the last daughter of the broken Zalari kingdom. And tomorrow, she would be sold to the worst of them all, Warlord Drek, a beast of a man who bought living things like toys. Ariva stared at the ground. No one was coming for her. Her family was gone. Her guards were killed. Her name, once spoken with respect, was now whispered in secret. But then, the sky cracked. A loud boom shook the camp. Guards looked up, alarmed. From the clouds above, a single black ship shot down like lightning. It wasn't big, it wasn't flashy, but it was fast, faster than anything on Zorvex 4. It crashed into the east wall, sending fire into the air. 1 second later, the wall exploded. Out of the smoke walked a tall figure, a human. Dust covered his coat. His face was hidden by a helmet, but his steps were steady. His rifle was hot. His eyes burned with purpose. His name was Corin Vale, a mercenary from Earth, and he was off mission. Corin wasn't here to save anyone. His job was to recover old tech in the desert. But when his scanner picked up life signs in the camp, young, weak, and screaming, he made a choice, one he hadn't made in a long time. He decided to care. Guards rushed him. He fired fast, clean. 3 fell, then 4. The cage alarms rang out. Corin ran straight to the center of the camp, blasting open steel doors. Fire burst around him, but he didn't stop. Inside the last cage, he found her. She looked up slowly. Their eyes met. Ariva had never seen a human before, but somehow, she felt safe. Corin broke the lock with 1 shot. The chain snapped loose. He knelt beside her and said only 2 words. "Come on." She didn't speak. She just nodded and reached for him with shaking hands. He lifted her into his arms and ran. Behind them, the camp burst into flames. Drones screamed in the sky. The warlord's men shouted. But it was too late. Corin's ship was already lifting. Inside, Ariva held tight to his chest, breathing hard. She whispered, "Why?" Corin looked down at her. Because no one else did. They flew across the desert, far from the burning camps. Corin landed in a hidden canyon under the cover of rocks. Inside the ship's small medbay, he treated her wounds, gave her water, fed her small pieces of fruit. She ate quietly, eyes always on him. "You're not like them," she said softly. "No," he replied. "I'm not." "You don't want to sell me?" Corin's jaw tightened. "Never." She stared for a moment, then nodded. "Then I owe you." "You owe me nothing." "But," she shook her head. "You don't understand, my people, my customs, you saved me, and that means—" She stopped. Corin raised an eyebrow. "Means what?" She looked down, shy and afraid. Then she whispered, "You now have the right of first night." Corin blinked. "What does that mean?" Ariva stood slowly, her body still weak but her voice stronger. "It means, I belong to you tonight. In our tradition, a woman of royal blood must offer herself to the one who saved her life. If I don't, I bring shame, not just to me, but to the bloodline I carry." Corin stared at her, silent. He wasn't a man of royalty, or tradition, or even honor. But something about her voice, something about how she stood, even with broken legs and torn clothes, it made him speak gently. "We'll talk about it tomorrow," he said. "Tonight you sleep. You're safe now." Ariva looked up at him, eyes wide and for the first time in years, and she smiled. The canyon stayed quiet through the night. No wind, no machines, no fire in the sky, just stars, cold, silent witnesses above the desert rocks. Inside the ship, Arriva slept on the medic bed, wrapped in a clean thermal blanket. Her breathing was soft. Her wounds were healing, but slowly. Her silver skin now glowed gently under the ship's low light. Corin sat nearby in the pilot's seat, eyes half closed, gun resting across his lap. He hadn't slept. His mind was restless. He kept thinking about what she said before she drifted off. You now have the right of first night. He didn't know what that meant in full, but it sounded serious, and sacred, and personal. When the sun peeked over the red cliffs the next morning, Corin stood and stretched. He checked the scanners. No ships, no drones. They were safe, for now. He walked into the back room, carrying a bowl of hot broth. Arriva was already awake, sitting upright, hair brushed back. Her royal posture had returned, but her eyes were softer now. Corin handed her the bowl. Drink. Slowly. She accepted it with both hands. Thank you. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then she said it again. You saved me. That means the right must be honored. Corin looked at her, calm but serious. Explain it to me. I don't want to guess wrong. Arriva nodded. She placed the bowl down, folded her hands in her lap. In my culture, she began, when a female of royal blood is rescued by someone outside her clan, the savior is owed the highest gift, the right of first night. It is not just about body. It is about bond, about honor. Corin raised a brow. You mean marriage? No, she said quickly. Not like yours. It is one sacred night, between savior and saved. It proves loyalty. It creates trust. After that, our paths can separate. First, they can stay joined. Corin sat back, arms crossed, and if I say no? Arriva lowered her gaze. Then I carry shame. My people will not accept me. They will say I refused our oldest vow. They may even strip my name. Corin's jaw clenched. That's not fair. It is tradition, she said softly. It is who we are. Silence filled the room again. Corin looked at her. She was young, yes, but not naive. She was proud, but not arrogant. She wanted to honor her customs, not force her will. She didn't beg. She offered. He stood up and walked to the small window. The canyon outside was bathed in golden light. I didn't save you to earn favors, he said. I know. I don't want your body as payment. I know that too. He turned to her. So why are you still offering it? Arriva stood now, slow and steady, even with her weak legs. Because you didn't take anything from me, not even a touch. And that is why I want to give this night to you. Not from fear, not from debt, but because I choose to. Corin stared at her for a long time. Then he nodded once. Then tonight, he said, we share a fire, not a bed. She blinked. You refuse? No, he said with a faint smile. I accept your bond. But I want the first night to be yours, not mine. Arriva's eyes glistened. She bowed deeply, the way her people bowed to kings. You honor me more than, you know. That evening, Corin set up a small fire near the ship. Not for heat, but for ritual. Arriva emerged wearing a fresh robe from the ship's storage. She had cleaned her face, tied her hair in the pattern of her tribe, and painted a small gold mark on her forehead, the symbol of gratitude. They sat across from each other, legs folded. Arriva spoke the ancient words of her people. I share this night not to serve, but to see. Not to belong, but to bond. With my protector, who took no power, only pain. Corin looked into her eyes. Then he replied with his own words. Not royal, not ancient. Just honest. I don't know your ways. But I know this. I'll never forget the woman who stood tall even when chained to the ground. She smiled, not with royalty, with warmth, and under the stars with no touch, no force, and no shame. They shared the truest first night her people had ever known. The desert winds outside had stopped. The world beyond the canyon slept still and silent. But inside the ship, Arriva lay wide awake. The fire from the night ritual had burned down hours ago. The first night was complete. No one touched. No one commanded. No one owned. And yet, something deep inside her had changed. She stood now, alone in the ship's washroom, staring at her reflection in the small mirror. She touched the golden paint still faintly glowing on her forehead. Back. On her homeworld, that mark meant she had offered her body and spirit to a savior, but she had not been touched. Not even once he had refused, and somehow that frightened her more than anything. Corin sat at the back of the ship, fixing a broken panel. His tools were slow, steady. His mind was elsewhere. He couldn't forget her face, the way she had bowed, the way she had looked at him not with duty, but with something else. Something like trust. Maybe more. He didn't want to break it, but he also didn't want to pretend it wasn't there. Arriva walked quietly into the main room. Her soft steps made no sound, but Corin noticed her right away. She sat across from him, hands folded. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. Corin looked up. "No. Why?" "You gave me your night," she said, "but you looked sad when it ended." Corin gave a small smile. "Not sad, just thinking." "About me?" He didn't answer. She looked down, her voice dropped. "My body is healed now, strong again. If you wish, we can complete the bond." He put his tool down. "Arriva, I didn't come here to—" She held up a hand. "Let me finish." She took a breath. "I'm not offering it because I owe you. I'm offering it because I want to know what it's like, when it's safe, when I can say yes and mean it." Corin's eyes softened. "Has no one ever given you that choice?" She shook her head. "Even before the war, I was promised to another royal. I was never asked what I wanted. I was trained to obey, smile, speak gently, and wait for the night when I would be taken." She looked up, pain behind her glowing eyes. "But now, for the first time, I want to choose. I want my first time to be with someone who let me say no, someone who held my hand, not my throat." Corin stood slowly and sat beside her. He didn't rush, didn't reach, just sat. Close. Present. "You're afraid?" he said gently. "Yes," she whispered. "I am too." She blinked. "Why would you be afraid?" He looked at the wall, at the silent stars beyond it. "Because I've done things," he said. "In war, in dark places. I've been paid to hurt, to kill, to protect. But I've never been asked to be gentle." She touched his hand. "You were gentle with me." He looked at her. Their fingers didn't lock, but they rested side by side. Silence held them for a long time. Not heavy, just peaceful. Then Arriva spoke again. "Will you stay with me tonight? Not as protector, not as savior, just as Corin." He nodded once, and they lay together, not in passion, not in fire, but in warmth, in trust. No kisses, no rush, just the quiet comfort of shared breath side by side. And somewhere deep in her chest, the chains finally fell away. Not because someone broke them, but because she did. The city of Valexa, once full of music and light, was now quiet and cracked. The towers still stood, but barely. Many had holes in their sides. Streets were broken. Flags of warlords still hung from some rooftops, faded and torn. Smoke curled in the distance. This was Arriva's home. And now, after months in chains, after near death in the desert, after everything, she had finally returned, but not alone. A human walked beside her. The royal gates opened slowly. Dust rolled from their rusted hinges. A crowd had gathered beyond the palace walls, survivors, soldiers, elders, and nobles, faces covered in fine cloths, watching in silence. Their eyes locked on her, the last princess of the Zalari bloodline. But they also locked on him, A human in desert armor. Some whispered, some frowned. Some simply turned away. Corin walked in silence. He didn't try to hide. He didn't bow. He walked like a man who had earned his place, even if the world refused to give it to him. Beside him, Ariva walked tall, head high, crown not on her head but in her posture. She stepped forward to address the nobles. "I have returned," she said, loud enough to echo across the stone plaza. "I escaped the slave camps. I survived the burning sands. And I now stand before you free." Some elders bowed slightly. A few guards lowered their weapons, but one noble, Lord Cyrith, stepped forward, anger in his voice. "You come back with a human at your side?" "I do," Ariva answered. "Did he take you?" He spat. "Did he touch royal blood without bond? Without blessing?" Corin's hand moved to his side, ready to defend. But Ariva raised her hand. "No," she said firmly. "He did not take. He gave. My honor is not broken. It is reborn." Murmurs spread. Cyrith stepped closer. "You speak of him like an equal. He is not Zelari. He is not even of this world. He is more noble than any of you who fled while I was chained." The words hit hard. Even the wind seemed to stop. Another voice rose from the crowd. A woman, older, cloaked in soft blue. "Then prove it," she said. "Let him stand the trial." Ariva turned. "Trial? If he is truly your protector, if he truly walked beside you in loyalty, then let him face the Catherine path." Gasps rippled through the nobles. Corin whispered, "What's the Catherine path?" Ariva's voice dropped. "It's a ritual of walking fire. A trial meant only for blood-bound warriors. It's pain, fire, memory. You walk through your worst fears publicly. If you fall, you're cast out forever." He nodded slowly. "And if I succeed, then you are one of us." He looked at her. "Do you want me to do it?" She didn't speak for a moment, then softly said, "I don't want to ask this, but if you don't, they will never accept me again." Corin looked up at the trial grounds, a burning line of stones, smoke rising from the sand. He smiled faintly. "Then let's burn." That night, under the blue moons, the trial began. Corin stood shirtless, barefoot, facing the fire path. Elders lined the sides. Ariva watched from the center, heart racing. The first few steps were easy, but then came the heat. Each stone burned his feet. Each step sent fire up his spine. His skin turned red. His breath shook. Flashes of his past struck him. His first kill. The day he left Earth. The day his old squad died because of a command he gave too late. Each memory was heavier than the last, but one image kept him going. Her face, her voice, her hand in his. He reached the final stone. His legs nearly gave out. But he stepped across and collapsed, not in pain, but in victory. The nobles stood silent. Then slowly, one by one, they began to kneel. Ariva ran to him, wrapped a robe around his shoulders and helped him stand. "You did it," she whispered. He smiled through the pain. "Told you I don't quit." That night, the people of Alexa cheered. Ariva was not just the lost princess anymore. She was a leader, and Corin, he wasn't just her savior, he was her equal. And their story was just beginning. The celebration fires burned long into the night. Music filled the air. Drums echoed through the stone city of Alexa. Crowds danced in the great square. For the first time in years, the people had hope again. Their lost princess had returned. And with her, a human warrior who walked through fire and didn't fall. But not everyone was happy. Far above the square, in a shadowed tower, cloaked nobles gathered in silence. "He's not one of us," one hissed. "He's earthborn, a stranger. He threatens everything." They looked down at the cheering crowd, and at Corin, standing beside Ariva, robe on his shoulders, feet still healing from the trial. The nobles saw what was coming, and feared it. "He cannot be allowed to stay," said the eldest noble. "And he must not live through the next night." Later, inside the palace chamber, Corin sat by a window. His legs ached, but he didn't complain. His hands were bandaged. The pain from the trial still burned, but he didn't regret a single step. He watched Ariva from across the room. She was speaking with her advisors, dressed in royal silver again, but her face was tired. The day had taken its toll. She glanced at him and smiled. He nodded. Even through pain, he could feel something warm beginning between them, something stronger than duty or tradition. It felt real. That night, long after everyone else had gone to sleep, Corin lay on a floor mat in a guest chamber. He didn't like soft beds. He preferred to be close to the ground, close to danger. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. Something felt off. Too quiet. He opened his eyes again and saw a shadow standing above him, a flash of silver, a blade. Corin rolled just in time. The knife cut the mat where his chest had been. He kicked up, grabbing the assassin's wrist, twisting hard. Another figure jumped from the corner, silent, fast, 2 of them. Corin ducked the strike, rolled across the room, grabbed a broken spear from the wall, and blocked the second attack. The fight was fast, dirty. One tried to stab from behind. Corin slammed him into the wall. The second pulled a poison blade, swung for his neck. Corin took the hit to the arm, grunted in pain, then drove his elbow into the attacker's throat. They both dropped. One unconscious, one gasping for air. Palace guards burst in moments later. Too late. Corin stood over the bodies, breathing hard, arm bleeding. Ariva arrived just seconds after. Her eyes widened when she saw him wounded. "Who did this?" she whispered, horrified. Corin wiped his bloody hand. "Someone who doesn't like humans walking through royal fires." The guards looked at the assassins, both wearing noble tattoos. Beneath their robes, one was still alive. Ariva knelt beside him. "Who sent you?" The man choked, then smiled through his bruised face. "He's changing you. That's why we had to stop him." She stood, fury in her eyes. "Take them to the stone cell and call the council." At sunrise, Ariva stood in the grand hall facing the circle of nobles. Corin stood behind her, arm bandaged, silent but sharp. She held up the blade used in the attack. "Someone tried to murder my protector in the night," she said, voice firm. "The council will punish them," one noble said calmly. "No," she replied. "The council will listen." The room grew quiet. "I will not let fear rule this city again. I will not let hate hide behind old laws." Her hand reached for Corin's. She held it high for all to see. "I was born royal, but I was saved by someone who had no crown, no blood, right? He gave me life, so now I give him place." Gasps echoed. Ariva turned. She looked Corin in the eyes. "Kneel." He blinked. "What?" She smiled gently. "You stood through fire. Now kneel for peace." Corin dropped to one knee. Ariva placed her hand on his shoulder. "By old law and new choice, I name you Shield of the Crown, Protector of the Queen, First of the Human Guard." Some nobles stood, some left, but none dared raise a voice, because in the people's hearts, it was already done. That night, Ariva and Corin stood alone on a quiet balcony. She whispered, "You could have died." He replied, "I'd die again, if it meant you'd rise." She reached for his hand, this time, not as a ruler, not as a ritual, but as a woman in love. And Corin held it, not with command, not with pride, but with promise. Thunder rolled across the sky of Alexa, not from weather but from warships. Black banners rose over the distant hills. Engines shook the air. Warlords who once ruled the outer sectors had returned, with armies, fire, and one goal: crush the queen, who had brought a human into the royal circle. Ariva stood on the high wall of her palace, cloak whipping in the wind. Below, citizens gathered in fear. Children clung to parents. Soldiers lined the streets. Panic was close. Corin stood beside her, wearing royal battle armor, crafted for him in secret, forged from the same silver the old kings once wore. But it wasn't the armor that made him powerful. It was how he stood, steady, calm, unshaken. Arriva turned to him. They come with tanks, airships, and beasts trained to tear through stone. Corin didn't flinch. Let them come. She looked at him. We don't have enough men, enough weapons. We have enough heart, he said. She stared for a long time, then nodded. Then I make this official, Corin Vale. You will lead the defense of Valexa. He bowed his head once. I'll die before I let them take it. She reached for his hand. Don't die. Fight. Win, and return to me. In the days that followed, Corin took command of the palace guard. But he didn't act like a noble. He trained like a soldier, and made them do the same. He taught the fighters how to move, in pairs, how to strike fast, how to use surroundings as weapons. He turned blacksmiths into trap makers. He turned farmers into archers. And most importantly, he turned fear into courage. The night before the invasion, Corin stood alone near the city gate. Arriva found him, there staring at the desert beyond the wall. She stepped quietly beside him. He spoke without looking. I've faced armies. I've lost squads, but this feels bigger. She nodded. Because it is. He looked at her. They don't just want your throne. They want your silence. And yours, she added. They fear that a human could rise without permission. He gave a small smile. Then let them fear. At sunrise, the horizon burned red. Warlord Drek led the charge, riding a beast made of bone and steel, followed by thousands of soldiers. Smoke bombs launched into the sky. Siege engines rolled toward the outer walls. Arriva stood with her. Commanders on the tower. Corin stood below at the front. When the first horn blew, he gave one signal, and the city lit up. Traps exploded. Walls unfolded into shields. Narrow paths funneled enemy troops into tight alleys where small squads waited. Every lesson he taught was now war. The battle lasted for hours. Corin fought with speed and fury. He didn't give orders from a tower. He was in the mud, shoulder to shoulder with her people. Blood on his armor, fire in his eyes. A spear came at his back. He blocked it with one arm, spun, and knocked the attacker cold. Above, enemy ships tried to land inside the city, until Arriva, standing on the palace roof, used old royal defense systems to blast them from the sky. Then came the worst moment. Warlord Drek broke through the southern wall. He charged straight toward the palace. Corin ran to intercept him. They met in the main courtyard, metal against metal, fist against fury. Drek growled, "You're just a man, a thing from Earth. You don't belong in her bed or her bloodline." Corin didn't answer. He simply fought harder. The battle was brutal, but Corin used his training, his speed, his rage, and in one final strike, he broke Drek's weapon, then knocked him unconscious before the crowd. The war was over. The people cried out, not in fear, but in victory. Later, Corin stood once again on the royal wall, blood on his hands, wounds on his back, but his eyes still sharp. Arriva walked toward him, tears in her eyes. He turned to her. "Your throne is safe." She shook her head. It was never about the throne. Then she whispered, "You're my crown now." And in front of her people she kissed him, not as a reward, but as a promise. The stars above Valexa glowed like lanterns. The war was over. The people were rebuilding. Fires were put out. Streets were cleaned. The sounds of hammers had replaced the sounds of fear. But inside the tall palace, in a quiet chamber lit by soft, violet light, one final story was still unfolding, not of war but of love. Corin stood near the balcony, dressed in a simple tunic. His wounds were healing. The ache in his body remained, but his mind was quiet for the first time in years. He looked over the city he helped save, not his home, not his people. And yet, it was the only place that had ever made him feel needed. Behind him, Soft footsteps echoed on the polished floor. He turned and saw Ariva. Not in armor, not in ceremony robes, but in a long, flowing gown made of silk. Her hair was loose, falling like moonlight down her back. Her face, no longer painted with duty, now held something gentler, something only for him. He smiled. "You look—" She stepped closer. "Like me?" He nodded. "Like the woman who stood before an army and never flinched." Ariva tilted her head. "And you still stand after facing a monster." Corin chuckled softly. "I've faced worse." "Like what?" He looked at her, eyes warm. "Loneliness." She blinked. Her voice softened. "Are you still lonely, Corin Vale?" "Not anymore," he said. She stepped closer. No guards, no council, no rules. Just her and him. She reached for his hand. He took it. Her fingers closed slowly around his. Then she whispered, "The first night was for honor. This night is for me." Corin searched her face. "What are you asking?" "I'm not asking," she replied. "I'm offering." He paused. "Not for tradition?" She shook her head. "For nothing but love." He looked down at her, surprised. "Love?" "Yes," she said, voice steady. "Not just for what you did, but for who you are. You didn't save me to take. You didn't fight to earn. You never pushed. You only stood until I could stand on my own." She leaned closer. "And now, I choose this. Not as queen, not as a woman in chains, but as me." Corin's heart beat faster. Not from fear, but from truth. He had traveled stars, fought wars, faced death, but nothing made him feel this alive. He touched her cheek gently. "You sure?" Ariva closed her eyes and nodded. "This is the first thing I've ever been sure of." And under the quiet glow of moonlight they came together, not with fire, not with rush, but with slow, warm hands and eyes that never looked away. They kissed. Not like strangers finding comfort, but like two souls recognizing something ancient, something only they could understand. Outside, the city rested. The wind moved gently through the towers. The stars watched in silence. Inside, a queen and her human shared a moment that no law could command, no tradition could force. A moment that was earned, a moment that was theirs. Later, they lay together, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her. No words were spoken. They didn't need to be. Because in that silence, something was sealed. Not a deal, not a duty, not a ritual. A bond, one stronger than blood, fire, or battle. In the days that followed, songs were written of the queen who returned with a human, of a man who walked through fire to protect a throne that was never his, of two hearts that broke every rule and made a new one, together. He was never meant to be her king, but he became something deeper. Her choice.